Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview. You only see two of us for those that are watching live on YouTube or Facebook Live. Brian Anthony Davis is out doing Brian Anthony Davis things. And so it's myself and Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave?
Not too much. So is it baby did a bad thing? Is that what's going on? Or I don't know. But no, we'll get by with just the two of us.
For sure. There will be a lot more dialogue and less rambling, but still.
Ouch. Ouch.
Yes.
Take that one, Brian Anthony
Davis.
Davis.
Zing, right across the bow. Okay. Let's get to something before we talk about the news of the week, before we talk about the draft and all the changes that are coming up, which is the crux of the podcast. Dave, why don't you tell everyone and remind everyone about the contest that we're doing, what's going on, and it's coming to a conclusion on Friday, so go ahead.
Yes, hopefully everything is good to go with the Friday shows, because everything has been good to go so far.
Let's Ride is good to go on Friday morning.
Let's ride. I'm hoping bad. I'm pretty sure bad came through with the final one. Oh, wouldn't that be terrible if everyone goes to the final show and there's nothing there? But no, I think everything came through there. The contest is for 2 tickets to the Steelers draft party on Saturday, April 30th. The party is supposed to start at noon, but they're my tickets. And as a season ticket holder, my tickets say 11 a.m. So when I transfer those tickets to whoever wins, they should still say 11 a.m., which is one of the good things. And I have some news with it. With all the other things going on there, where you can go out and try to kick a field goal at Heinz Field like I've been able to do. I can't do it on YouTube, but I could do it at Heinz Field. Sorry, I just had to say that. And, to throw the ball around, there's going to have some flag football there. There's going to be Steelers legends there to meet. They announced a few of them today. Would you like to know who they are, Jeff? We're here, Jefferson Hartman. Would you like to hear the guy?
Yeah.
They have Mel Blount.
Good.
Alan Faneca.
Yes.
Vance McDonald.
Okay.
Charlie Batch. Sean Sweesom, and more. That's what they announced today.
More.
More. So, but I mean, that's already some pretty good Steelers that you got going to be there. Usually they have them in the concourses where you can go and line up to meet them, and you get a pick, get one of their pictures that they sign. That's what they've done in years past. Various other activities there's lots of like kid stuff, like even bouncy houses and stuff on the UPMC lounge level, all kinds of stuff just through the stadium. The pro shop will be open. It's a neat experience just to be out and walking on Heinz Field. That's what I like the most, is like I went out and just laid down on the very middle of Heinz Field just to say I did. So you ever laid down on Heinz Field, Jeff?
Can't say I have.
Okay, so there we go. So but that's what the prize is. And when you're there, you're supposed to go meet up with my big brother, Rich, Big Brosco.
Yeah, does Rich have a Twitter account? Like
how are they? Big Brosco.
Okay, so you got to find Big Brosco by finding him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And
whoever wins, I'll try to reach out and make a connection there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'll be in the live chat. Rich is actually going with one of our live chatters at times. Thaddeus Kennedy's going up there with Rich. So it could be a little BTSC party. But you had to listen to the shows, 6 shows, each giving you a clue. They give you, bottom line is they give you a starting position and a year. And from that, you have to find the player and their jersey number. All we need is the number. So you're going to have 6 numbers. If you haven't listened, Let's Ride on Wednesday, the War Room on Wednesday, Steeler Stat Geek Thursday, What Yin's Talking About Thursday, which was pretty funny, I have to say.
I haven't listened yet.
Oh, really?
Not yet.
Well, they tried to scold me about an article on the site, and here it wasn't even me that wrote it. It was Shannon. So that's all right. And they actually played a clip from last week's preview where we were busting on them. So that was in the show. But the other 2 shows are Let's Ride on Friday and Here We Go, the Steelers show with Brian and Kate.
Oh, my God.
So make sure you listen to those. As soon as you hear that one at noon, be ready to listen to that one right at noon so you can get that last number. Email that to Jeff at bngblitz@gmail.com. First one that has the numbers right wins the 2 tickets.
Be caller number 9 after
Be
you hear
caller number 9.
All right, let's get to the news. There has been some news actually on the Steelers front this week. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, Dave. First and foremost, when you found out that the Steelers were returning to St. Vincent College in Latrobe, your thought was what?
Finally.
Was there more to it than was it more to it than just the fan experience?
I've never been to Latrobe. I've never been there. So for me to say, oh, it's just so nice to know they're there, because when I went before, I know a lot of people had said that. That's not me. I want to see them back into that routine. I think you can get so much more camaraderie and team building and everything else when they are going to be immersed in Pittsburgh Steelers 24/7, because you're going to all be there together doing that. What's crazy is that right now, where the roster stands, less than 30% of the players have been to Latrobe.
That's incredible.
That's crazy. If the last, I think it's 15 or 16 spots that ends up, whenever it ends up being the full 90-man roster, if they don't sign someone who's been there before, like a Terrell Edmonds, then you're looking at under 25%. So you're talking about 3/4 of the team showing up there, and it'll be their first time in Latrobe at St. Vincent's for training camp. That's crazy. I'm just happy that they're back. I just feel like it's so much of the Pittsburgh Steelers is tradition. That's a tradition. So they can get back to that tradition.
We should go up.
I'd love to.
We should make a trip to Latrobe this year. We'll do
keep saying we were supposed to, and you bailed on us at the last second.
Oh, you're going to put that on me.
What was that, 2019? You did. Okay. You bailed. But you know what? I'm kind of glad we didn't make the trip, because they ended up canceling practice on the day we were supposed to go.
That's my fear. Is
it's the only one they canceled that year.
What is it, like 3.5? It's like 3.5 or 3
Probably
hours, maybe around that. But still, to drive all the way up there.
Google the Beehive and then add another 20 minutes.
There you go. Or, I mean, what if you go up and it's like, oh, we're just doing special teams. Like, we drove all the way up here to watch special teams practice. So there is a risk there. But maybe if we do, we'll let you know for sure. Next thing was the schedule release. Today, Thursday, the NFL announced at May 12th, which is a Thursday. They are going to announce the full regular season schedule. And the NFL is just, boy, do they know what they're doing. Like the NFL draft, the dust will be settling, and the NFL's like, haha, another event for you. Here's your schedule. And it's such a big thing. I still remember the days when you just looked in the paper and there it was, and there's your schedule. Dave, question is, what is the first thing you look for when the schedule is released? What's the first thing?
Opening week. That's the first thing I do.
So just week 1, really?
First thing I do is look at week 1.
Okay.
Second thing I look for is the bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
I used to always look at the bye first. That was the first thing I always checked. Now, as an adult, as a father, as a guy that has to do a lot of stuff for the website, the first thing I look at is, do they play on Thanksgiving and do they play on Christmas? That's it. And I pray to myself, please don't let them play on those 2 days. I hate when the Steelers play on those 2 days. And I know I put that on Twitter, and a lot of, especially folks overseas, said, we love it when they play on the holidays because they get to see the games and all that. And I understand that. This is just me.
That means we have to work on the holidays.
We literally are working. Like it's writing, it's podcasting, it's annoying, because really all you want to do is sit down and spend time with your family. So that's the first thing. The second thing I always do is look at the bye week. And you know what? This just comes from my father. We always complained about the bye week. What is the last bye week, Dave? When is that? Is like week 13?
I remember I don't know what they did last year. I know when Tampa won the Super Bowl, they had the last bye week. It was week 4. It was in December. It was week 14. We would always complain. Oh, the bye week's in week 5. NFL screwing the Steelers. Like I remember my dad saying that to this day when it would come in the paper. But week 3 at times. They've had that a couple times. Ugh.
Is there ever a bad bye week though? I mean, there's always injuries. There's always a time when you're like, oh, okay. But then also you look for where are primetime games.
Yep.
When they play on Thursday. When do they, is that going to be an issue? Last year, for some reason, it stuck out to me when we did the special show, which we'll probably do again this year, but because it's being debuted on a Thursday, it would be the Steelers preview unveiling of the schedule. You had said about the Minnesota game last season, because it was Thursday Night Football coming off the Baltimore Ravens game. You said, this game scares me. And I was like, it's Minnesota. They'll be fine. And then it comes around in the regular season. And you're thinking it's a little dicey. This is a little dicey. So it's going to be interesting. But anything in particular else? Anything else you look for in the schedule when it comes out?
I'm a season ticket holder. I'm looking at all the home games. Every home game. I'm looking for a good 1:00 game that I can go to. And I check those primetime games, and I want them all on the road because primetime games at home are not good. They're not easy for me to go to living so far away. So therefore, the people that I like to sell my tickets to first are people that I know firsthand. I don't like to just slap them online. I would prefer to have the experience with someone I know sitting in those seats. I even when I'm sitting at home on my couch or sitting next to you on your couch with games, I like knowing what person is sitting in my seat at Heinz Field during the game. And when they're primetime games, it's really difficult for a lot of people to get there that don't live in Pittsburgh. So I don't like them. I like to watch them at home, but I don't like having to worry about, am I going to be able to do anything with those tickets?
How many games do you try to go to a year?
I go to at least 2. Obviously I didn't go to any in 2020. I went to 2 last year. I went to 4 in 2019, if you count the preseason.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and all 4 of them, one was a 4:30 game. The other 3 were all prime time, and it was brutal. Brutal.
In 2019, that was the famed Buffalo Bills game.
Yes, that was the infamous spooning incident of 2019
with one Brian Anthony Davis.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about some news. It's a little bit older, but Miles Boykin was claimed off of waivers, wide receiver drafted in the 3rd round in Notre Dame by the Baltimore Ravens. Teammate of one Chase Claypool. When you saw the Steelers made the move, what were your thoughts?
It's one of those things that you thought it made sense when he got released for the Steelers to maybe claim him off of waivers. You just didn't know if they'd do it, and they did. So if you think about that, that was a name that a lot of people had tied to the Steelers during that draft. Because I remember that as much as anything, where the next year people were like, oh, well, the Steelers didn't take Boykin last year. Maybe this year they should take Claypool. And they did. So it's an interesting flyer. Remember, yes, it's $2.54 million for his salary, the way it's set up to be the last year, but there's no dead money. If he doesn't make the roster, it all comes right back onto the salary cap. So it really, to me, because there's no dead money or anything with it, see if he's worth it to stick around after training camp.
Yeah, he's another big body, 6'4", I think 220, something like that. And I know that Brian Anthony Davis has always said, they need another Jericho Cotchery type, which would be great. For me, though, there's something about this guy, not so much from the way that they play. I'm expecting more of a Darius Hayward-Bay, if that makes sense. He is going to play special teams. That's something Jeffrey Benedict is going to do an entire article on in terms of his ability to play and willingness. That's another key word, willingness to play special teams for the Steelers. It just seems like a guy Hayward-Bay was different story in terms of his pedigree, 1st-round draft pick, blazing speed. I don't expect much of him as a receiver, but if they could find a way to use him as a blocker, that's something that Kevin Smith brought up in our Slack channel when they signed him, and his ability and willingness to block, they could find a spot for him. For sure, they could find a spot for him. So Miles Boykin's on the team. That leaves really just one gaping hole at safety as they head into the NFL draft. Good.
Can I ask you something about Boykin?
Yeah.
All right. So he's college teammates with Chase Claypool.
Yes.
Do you see a scenario where that could be where that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing?
How could it be a bad thing in your
opinion? Could it be a bad thing? Okay. How could it be a bad thing? You ever have that guy from college that was just, when the two of you got together, things just were crazy?
Okay, so you're talking about
you were young and stupid and in college. You know what I mean?
I got you. Yeah.
We don't know the relationship between the two of them from college, but sometimes, what they call it on How I Met Your Mother, revertigo. You get around a friend from a long time ago and you revert back to a certain childish way simply because you hadn't been around them for a while. I don't think that's going to be the case here with Chase Claypool, but you also got to think, there's teammates. That's only good things. Well, it doesn't have to be.
Well, yeah, and there could be people on your team that you didn't like.
Yeah,
Let's
that's the
also
other thing. We
not
don't know if they
forget
got
that too.
along.
Like, not even off the field stuff, on the field, in the locker room, maybe these two guys butted heads more than they did get along. They tolerated one another. Anyone that's played any sport, whether it's high school or up, knows there were people on your team that you just didn't get along with. You kind of
Mhm.
just existed. You did what was necessary for the team, and then you went on your way.
Yeah.
Every single sport that I've played, no matter what, I don't care if it was golf, baseball, lacrosse, football, doesn't matter. There were players that I was like, I really don't like this guy.
Yeah.
Can't stand him. He's a teammate, and I appreciate that part of it, but that's it. So, yeah, maybe there is some negative to that, but I would hope there'd be more positives than negatives. And this would be a situation where I think that we go back to what we talked about with St. Vincent College. Being in Latrobe and being on campus, you're inundated with football for what, 2 weeks? Maybe a little bit
Well,
more?
no,
Is it more
it's
than that?
usually through the second preseason game, and they're usually a good 10 days before the first preseason game. So you're talking usually about 3.5 weeks.
So 3.5 weeks. I mean, yeah, I have a feeling that they'll be able to figure things out by then, but we'll see. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, and I'm sure we'll hear from Boykin at some point.
Yeah.
All right, the headline of this podcast is that the next few weeks there's going to be a massive amount of change within the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. From a roster standpoint, with them adding all their draft picks throughout the 3-day process. It starts next Thursday, which, by the way, this will be the last Steelers preview, Dave, and right, because next week we'll be doing a recap show of the first round draft pick. So this will be the last Steelers preview.
I'm still waiting for the senior editor to tell me what we're doing. So
The senior editor. I'm going to be
wait,
talking about the team. That's what I'm going to be
no,
doing. I'll
no,
have to do a
no.
electronic
So maybe
podcast.
the podcast producer isn't here to try to tell us what our lineup is for everything. But no, yeah, we'll be talking after the first round pick next Thursday. I
it'll be-
assume it will be us, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I don't care who it is. I don't
I'm
care
not
who it is.
I don't know if excited is the word. I'm exhausted. I'm literally exhausted with the rumors and the
Yeah.
speculation and the mock drafts.
This is the burnout time.
This
Yeah.
is the burnout time. And even though the Steelers made the playoffs, so we had an extra week of coverage, whereas other teams were right into the NFL draft. And oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I don't know how Andrew Wilbar and Jeremy Betts do it. Like I'm so burnt out from this stuff.
It's still the same amount of time from the Senior Bowl to the draft, right? The Senior Bowl was still the same time. I don't know, but it's the takes, it's the crazy takes, it's the hot takes, it's the, oh my goodness, there's no way that the Steelers brass did that much investigation into quarterbacks to not draft one. Yeah, there is. Yeah. Sure, there is. I remember one time needing to get a new vehicle, and I dove into one specific type and went and test drove and did all the research and everything else. You know what I found out? Wasn't for me. Okay.
It's a good analogy.
That's what you got to remember. So yeah, they're doing their due diligence. Yeah, they're doing the research, but so many hot takes of all that's what they're definitely going to do. Just look at what they did. All of a sudden, everyone is, and I'm tired of everyone, even just fans, my draft board. You know, great. I'm glad you enjoyed making your own draft board, but your draft board doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. The only one that matters is the draft board of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not a draft Nick. That's the term that I gave them is a draft Nick. But it's this draft. I want fans to remember too, and this is something that's every year, not just this year, that there's so much value in days 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to just focus so much on day 1, rightfully so. First round pick, you're expected to see that player be a significant contributor in year 1. Day 2, in my opinion, is the biggest day. You get 2 picks, and they are expected to also be a contributor in some way, shape, or form. Those second and third round picks. Now, the only way I would be really upset is if the Steelers traded up and got rid of like a day 2 pick. That would really burn me a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. Day 3, even Saturday, that's like that's a crazy day. For those that are wondering about the podcast schedule, we don't have everything ironed out yet. In the past, we did a special podcast after the first round pick. I think, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, we did a podcast after the second and the third, and then a wrap up for all day 2. And then I think day 3, we just did like a day I can't remember. It's a lot of podcasting, I'll tell you that.
All I know is that I did a breaking news audio only podcast after every pick that was published in less than 15 minutes after the pick was made.
Right.
On the audio side. Then we did a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Jeff, we were working so hard doing so much work. I can't even, it all ran together. I did so many podcasts.
It's a blur. It definitely is a blur, and there's a lot of content. It's fast and furious. I'll never forget my first NFL draft as the person in charge of Behind the Steel Curtain. And I had spoken with my superior at the time, who at that time, he's still with SB Nation, but he ran the Chiefs website. And he goes, Jeff, you just have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. And you have to be fast. You got to be faster than everyone else. And I'm like, I'm ready for this. I wasn't ready for it. There's nothing that gets your blood pumping. Then you have that tweet go across, whether it's a beat writer or whether it's the Steelers themselves with the 20th overall pick, the Steelers select, boom, boom, boom. And you've got to get everything done as fast as possible. Get it on Facebook, get it online, and boom, boom, boom. It's intense. It is intense.
Last year, after I did the pick, it was the Buddy Johnson pick. Yeah. The second, 4th round pick. I did the breaking news podcast. I got that out there. Jeffrey and Michael were doing the YouTube show after that. I just hopped in there to talk to them after the show. So I'm down. I'm there. They bring me up onto the show, so I'm there talking to them. We go to finish the show, and we all right at the end, we're like, "Uh-oh, the Steelers just traded into the 5th round." Everything just broke crazy at that point. It really is insane when you're trying to get the content. I hope you all appreciate it. For us, it's a lot of fun, but it is so much work, and it's for you all. If you all don't like it, it's not worth it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people enjoy it and they appreciate it, and it gives them a sounding board, especially those that watch live on YouTube or Facebook.
Yeah.
And also gives them an idea of the players that they drafted. We'll be leaning on people like our own Andrew Wilbar and Kevin Smith and Jeffrey Benedict, the people that do pay pretty close attention to these prospects in regards to, okay, so the pick was made. We know the position. We know the school. But what else do we know? And so that's when we'll be able to dive in a little bit deeper and hopefully give the fans a perspective. But there's some people we found out, Dave, that, my gosh, that they get their news from podcasts. And we never thought in a million years that people would get their news from podcasts and not the written word in that medium. And we've come to find out that a lot of people do get their news from podcasts. So we're trying to cater to everyone, and it's never perfect, but change is coming for the Pittsburgh Steelers after this NFL draft in one way or another. But then also in a couple weeks, everyone thinks it's going to be immediate. It's not. It's the new GM is not going to be announced right after the draft. If that's what you're thinking, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's just not going to happen. They're going to wait a couple weeks. They're going to do their diligence, and then they're going to make
due diligence. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. So it's going to be really interesting, but man, there's going to be a lot of change. Dave, this is a really pivotal offseason, would you say? Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like, and I talk about this on my Let's Ride on Friday morning. I like the trajectory of the team. I said, this is the stock going up or down. I actually think as of right now, entering the draft, it's going up, but they still have some work to do for this to continue in that trajectory. Do you agree?
I've been thinking about a few of these things, been dwelling on them. Just getting excited about knowing who the next Steelers are. And you say it's a pivotal offseason. My question is this: when is it not pivotal?
When you're not having to replace a GM that's been doing it for 20 plus years, going into a season without your Hall of Fame quarterback.
Your Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah. But I mean, last year, we're like, oh, this is a pivotal draft. The Steelers couldn't make all the moves in free agency. They're going to have to call on their rookies more than ever before, which they did. And so that was a pivotal offseason. The year before, oh man, with the pandemic and the being able to do training camp and things like that you can't do. It's going to be such a pivotal offseason, even with the franchise. Oh, and Ben Roethlisberger's coming back off of the injury and everything else. Yeah, it is. And it definitely is. And every single offseason it's for a different reason, but it's always a pivotal offseason, in my opinion.
Let's go back to 2020. Every team with the protocols that are in place, every team had an even playing field. Okay. Last season, yes, the salary cap decreased, but a lot of teams were in that boat as well, where they're going to have to rely on making creative, maneuvering their way through this salary cap decrease for the first time in NFL history that it decreased since the salary cap was instituted. This year, though, I mean, you think about everything that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about replacing or trying to replace your Hall of Fame franchise quarterback of the last 18 years. Like, that's huge. Then you're going to have to replace your general manager at some point. And some of us, sometimes I find myself in this realm as well, where I just kind of like poo-poo it's just, well, they'll hire Brandon Hunt or they'll bring in some, well, it could go wrong too. Yeah. I mean, you ran through the list of GMs on your Stat Geek podcast Thursday morning, and
there ain't many.
What's that?
There ain't many.
No, but there were a couple where you're like, oh, I remember that. That didn't pan out too well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to have that situation. You see all these other GMs around the NFL that are there for a year or two and they get fired. The Steelers, they are based on continuity, and they're losing a lot of that continuity this offseason. And I think, too, when you think about Matt Canada, and this is, if he doesn't get it right with these players, I mean, they put a lot of money into the offensive line, especially the interior. People would always say they need two things. They need depth and they need experience. Well, they've got both of those now with James Daniels, Mason Cole, Kendrick Green's going to be back. J.C. Hassenauer is going to be back. Kevin Dotson should be healthy. They have, I think, a pretty solid interior offensive line. You have one of the best running backs in the game, I still feel like, in Najee Harris coming out. You're going to have to get some weapons in the draft. But if Matt Canada, there's some pressure there. This is an offseason where it feels different to me, though, Dave. I understand what you're saying. Like every year we always say it's pivotal. It's pivotal. Like that's just a big word. But this offseason, maybe it's just me. It feels different. It feels
very unfamiliar territory. Very unfamiliar territory.
Even just quarterback.
That's the difference. Yeah.
Throw the GM stuff out.
Yeah.
Just the quarterback.
If it was just one of those two, that's very unfamiliar. And it's both of them. So yeah, they're all pivotal, but this one is just in such a different way. You're exactly right. I didn't want to poo-poo on the whole idea of, it's no different than any other year being pivotal. No, it really is. And people have to remember, whoever lines up as the Steelers quarterback in week 1 of 2022 does not have to be an 18-year Hall of Fame quarterback. To think that you're going to have that the very next game after Ben Roethlisberger. And I know people will say, I watched through the 80s. So did I. Okay. Oh, I followed through the 80s. And you know what, with that and the quarterbacks and everything between Bradshaw and Roethlisberger, you are right. You are right. But you also have to remember, sometimes it takes time to get the right guy. And for those people that say it's got to be in this year's draft, well, the right guy might not even be in this year's draft. Might not even be in next year's draft. You just have to be ready for when the right guy can be the guy. And so to expect that Ben Roethlisberger 2.0 is going to be the starter week 1 of next year, that's just too much. You've just got to say, hey, could you get someone that can, with this defense, go out there and put the Steelers in a position to win and get hot at the right time at the end of the season to roll into the postseason? That's all you want. And I know I'm going a little bit of a rant, but I was thinking about something yesterday. What is it? Random thoughts when you're in the shower or something like that about the Steelers, when you just have time to think for a few minutes. Yeah. And it's, so many people are like, oh, the Steelers, they're so down on them. What was it on what Yin's talking about? They were saying like the Steelers in the AFC right now, according to FanDuel, they have the 14th best quarterback. I mean, that's out of 16, if you think about it. Yeah. But Steelers fans are like, oh, well, Mitch Trubisky. When it's your team, you can see the potential of what could be in a good way. And when it's not your team, you can look at it and like, oh man, that's not going to work out for them. for non-Steelers fans. But then there's even Steelers fans that say that's not going to work out either. But we have more of a chance to be optimistic about our own team. So the fact that other people that aren't following the Steelers are thinking, oh, they're going to be in last place in the division, that's because they don't see your dreaded P word of potential rather than how everything could go wrong. Oh, the Steelers, it could be a mess. We'll see what happens. But if they are going to be a very different team in the coming weeks between the draft, between the undrafted free agents, and if they've then still got to make moves based on what they don't get done in the draft.
Yeah, there are still free agent moves to be made, and that's going to come after the draft. It'll come wait all the way till training camp. Could be all the way until roster cuts. Like there are still moves to be made. They will be made. I always write this in articles whenever they sign someone to their offseason roster. The 90-man offseason roster is fluid. It changes a lot. So it's something to keep in mind. What's up, Dave?
2. The Steelers had 2 starters that were not on their roster at the end of OTAs and minicamp.
Last year.
So
2 starters?
Yeah. They did not have Joe Schobert. They did not have
Adams. He started a game, didn't he?
I wouldn't. Well, I meant seasons long.
Okay.
Right. And they didn't have Trey Turner.
Yep.
They started for the season.
Yeah.
And they weren't even on the roster until after minicamp. So you still got to remember, you could still, whether that's good or bad is a whole different story. But there are still moves that are going to be made all the way up until the first official snap happens.
Well, heck, the Schobert news broke during a preseason game. It was against the Eagles. I'm sitting on my couch
next to my brother watching that game with him so we could go golfing the next day. And we're like, is this really happening?
Schobert's wife is on TikTok saying what?
Yeah, and of course, Michael Beck, he was right on that.
He was on it.
With that, sharing that with everyone. We're like,
oh, she's a great follow on TikTok.
I'm like, should we wait for a better source? And then
they announced it. I don't remember if we ran with it or not.
All I know is that they talked about it on
the game. Yeah.
Well, but you didn't have the Pittsburgh, or did you have the Pittsburgh feed?
Well, if it's on NFL Network, you get a half of one and a half of the other sometimes, or they just do the home team, which I think was in Philly. So I don't know if you heard it. So I had to listen to Ross Tucker for 4 quarters.
Okay, yeah, because you guys were complaining about that because I was at my brother's. We were in the Pittsburgh home area, so we were getting the local channel.
There you go.
Yeah, it was interesting stuff.
It is. So, yeah, things can change. I mean, this change that we talk about in the coming weeks, I mean, that's not just leading up to the draft. It's not just the general manager. There's going to be constant change. Dave, let's say you're at the casino and you have $50 and you have to put money down.
I have more than $50.
Okay. You have $50.
I don't walk in a casino with $50.
No, but you're placing a bet. Oh, you're placing a bet. You're putting the money on who is going to be the week 1 starting quarterback for the Steelers. Who are you putting your money on?
I'll put it on Mitch Trubisky.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be horrible odds because he's the odds-on favorite, I would imagine. But still,
I'd put 30 on that, and then I'd put 20 on the Steelers winning the Super Bowl just to see what would happen. I do that anytime, any season I can. I just do it.
They have great odds. Yeah. If they were to somehow pull it off, you would make yourself a lot of money for sure. Let me ask you another question. This is something I asked Michael Beck on Let's Ride on Friday. I'm curious to see what you think. What do you think the scenario would have to be for Joe Haden to come back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that's interesting. It would basically, I think it would have to be that he decides he still wants to play, even if it's for the bottom barrel price, and no one else is grabbing him. And if he's going to play for that little, he'd rather do it where it's familiar rather than somewhere new.
You think that's what it would take. Do you think an injury has to happen?
Does an injury have to happen?
Because you think about the roster, the way it's constructed right now with Witherspoon back, Wallace in the mix, Cam Sutton's still there.
And that's like, I hear so many people saying the Steelers have to draft us. Why are you not having the Steelers draft a corner with their first overall pick? And I'm like, they have 3 number 2s right now, if you think about it. And do you really think their first round pick is going to be ready to be a number 1 right away. It'd be nice to get one for eventually, but then you're going to have guys fighting to get on the field. Throw Joe Haden into that mix too. But an injury would make it more likely, much more likely.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't be impossible without an injury, but with an injury, it could be a lot more likely. But who's to say somebody else doesn't have an injury coming up here soon, and that's where he lands?
But I know that Hayden said, I think this was on Twitter last year, that he'd rather retire than play safety. I'm more wondering if he would be willing to play inside if he came back. So, for instance, would he be willing to play in the slot or play the dime and not necessarily be the outside cornerback? That's it's a very prideful thing for these people. I mean, especially someone that the pedigree of Joe Haden.
Or just a sub-package player,
right,
not out there all the time.
That's what he such though. He'd have to be paid as such.
But that's what he was becoming last year after coming back from the injury. That's really what he was with the Steelers. So he wasn't the guy that was out there taking every single snap. But at the same time, you can't say the man doesn't have value. He was right in front of me coming up and tackling that ball on 4th down.
Yeah.
Against the Titans. I mean, the guy can still play. Can he still cover deep? Just run with a guy with a speedster going down the field? I don't think so. But that's what happens in the NFL after time. But in other words, if Joe Haden's going to still be successful in the NFL, he has to be in a situation where he's just allowed to do the best things that he can do. And when that's not that situation, he has to not be on the field. That's regardless of where he plays. I mean, whichever team he plays. Yeah.
All right. A couple questions about the upcoming draft coming up next Thursday. Do you have in your gut, when you're thinking about the upcoming draft, do you think the Steelers are going into it with the thought of trading up?
With the thought, yes. I don't think they ever go into it with the thought of that they're not. I mean, I shouldn't say that either, because they could be going into draft and say, hey, we're just going to let it come to us, and we're just going to take, see what happens. But they have to be prepared if somebody that they want is, let's say it's someone who they thought was going top 10, and they might be available then in round. I'm not even looking at what teams are there. I know that's what like Baltimore and Cleveland are picking if I say 15. So I'm not necessarily meeting with teams. I'm not looking at that. But if a player is already falling lower than what they think, and they don't think they're going to fall any further, and they want to go get them, you have to understand what you're willing to do to go get them. Are you willing to give up capital this year? Are you willing to give up capital next year? Are you willing to do what has to be done to do that? And I could pretty much guarantee right now that the Steelers know how far they're willing to move up if they want, based on what they would have to give up to do so.
Yeah.
They might already know there's no way we're going up into the top 10. What it'll cost versus what we'd have to give up. We're not willing to do that. We're not even thinking about it. And when I say top 10, I'm just making up a number.
Right.
It might be they're not moving into the top 3. They know what that is. But at the same time, a lot of times they just sit back and let it come to them.
Yeah, it's definitely something there's so many fans that are they're so, I guess, I don't even know what the word is, that they are so adamant that they don't want the Steelers to trade up for like a quarterback, for like a Malik Willis, and you're entitled to your opinion. However, I think that if they are going to trade up to get someone, then I think that they trust themselves and they trust that player to be the guy.
Yeah.
And if that player turns out to be the guy, no one's ever going to complain about the draft capital surrender to get that guy. So, yeah, on paper, you might say, oh, Malik Willis isn't the guy. Okay, but what if he is the guy? And what if you just found your next franchise quarterback for the next 18 years? I think that I would take that. Giving up a second-round pick next year, sure, or whatever it would take. I'm not sure if that's exactly it. Yeah. But I'm not afraid of them trading up. Everyone says, well, Devin Bush in 2019. Before Devin Bush tore his ACL, I don't think many people were complaining about Devin Bush. Am I wrong, Dave?
Oh, there was a few out there that just don't like the Steelers trading up because they want them to do other things. But if you're talking about simply Bush's production, I mean, if you go back and give me his first season and a quarter, that's the first 4 games of year 2 before the injury. I'm still saying, yep, worth it. Yep, worth it. Now there's some big question marks. Those question marks could be bigger question marks after 2020. They could be erased question marks after 2020. We'll have to see how it plays out. But I'm going to say something you might think is. I mean, this is our last show on the preview before the draft. Okay. So throw this out there. Do you see the Steelers trading up for a position other than quarterback?
I actually do see the Steelers trading up for a position that is a quarterback. I'm going to ask you what your prediction is, but I'll hold mine for then. I don't think they trade up for a position outside of quarterback. If you think about the positions of need, in my opinion, you're trading up for a position that you feel like this is a game changer at that position. And so we need to go get that player. Most of the positions are pretty deep, in terms of the draft. Like wide receivers pretty deep. I feel like you can get a good one in the second. For those that listen to my podcast on Wednesday with Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network, he talked about how even though the safety class isn't great and it's not deep, there is some really good value in the later rounds. I don't think they would try to go up and get a Hamilton or someone like that.
But that's my question. See, to me, I think where you could see a possibility is with someone that you thought was going top 10 is then there after 15. What if Hamilton, who a lot of people had top 5, now they're saying, well, maybe he's fallen a little bit, maybe he's top 10. What if he's sitting there and makes it past Cleveland and Baltimore? Are you willing to say, hey, we can solve a problem where we don't have to sign a free agent and all we have to do is give up something to move up 4 spots?
For sure, yeah, I'd make that trade. I'd make that trade in a heartbeat. What I hate about the NFL draft is that we can talk about all these scenarios, and I would say right there, if you need to trade up 4 spots to get Hamilton out of Notre Dame, do it. Make the move. Make the move. However, so many things can change. It's literally like the pebble into the pond with a ripple effect. Let's say Carolina at 6, they get an offer from the Saints, and they say, we want your 6 overall pick. We have 2 first-round picks that we'll shop one of them. We're still going to have another one in the back end. And that changes everything. Because if the Saints go up and take Malik Willis 6 overall, the Steelers are now like, okay, how do we value Kenny Pickett? Where does Kenny Pickett go? Does Seattle take a quarterback at 9? Like all these different things, it's one of those situations where you're like, okay, I would make that trade that you just talked about, Dave. But at the same time, so many things. Hamilton could go 3rd overall. Heck, he could go Detroit number 2. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy. Like I said, one of my favorite ones was the infamous 2019 draft. I was like, let the Steelers sit pat and maybe and I think there's a decent possibility. I'm like, he might go a pick or 2 ahead of them, but I'm like, my pick for that draft was Clelin Ferrell. I've said that a number of times.
Yes,
he went 3rd. Right,
I remember that
3rd to the Raiders, and I'm like.
I remember sitting there on my couch just laughing hysterically. Like, Dave's guy just went 3rd.
No, and here's what's crazy. I'm sitting in a movie theater watching the premiere of the last Avengers movie with my headphones in, listening to the draft in that draft. And I was like, really? Oh, well, I'm going to go back and enjoy this movie.
I do remember that.
But I mean, that's the thing that's crazy. I mean, when the Steelers drafted David DeCastro at 24, they didn't expect David DeCastro to be there 24. Yeah. But I mean, some of these, they might have to look at it and say, wow, we could get somebody, maybe they like Hamilton that would be a great, strong safety. I know some people, then the next best safety is like Hill out of Michigan. He's like a slot corner.
Yeah.
That's not really answering the question for what the Steelers need. That's just going to add more into the mix that he'll, beat out eventually. But I mean, I'm just saying it's not filling the same need. But let's say that you have somebody like Hamilton, and they think he's the guy. Oh man, you put him with Minka Fitzpatrick, and we're set at safety for a long time. Then, and he's still sitting there. Then make a move to go get him if you don't think he's going to get there. To me, that's what they did with Troy Polamalu. That's what they did.
Traded up with Kansas City in 2003 to get Troy. I'm trying to think of other times they've traded up. We obviously know Devin Bush in the first round. Like I know they traded up technically to take Mason Rudolph in the third in 2000 and what was that 18? Was that 18? Yeah.
18. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It was 18.
Can you think of any other time that they when was the most when else did they traded up in the first round recently? In the Mike Tomlin era, in the first round.
Bush. That was I'm pretty sure that was the first time under Tomlin.
Yeah, in the first round.
Under Tomlin, they traded in the first round, because otherwise it would have been. Didn't they trade up for Polamalu? Didn't they trade up for was Santonio Holmes a trade up?
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah,
I think he was.
So
he was, but that's
and they traded down with the Casey Hampton.
That was the only time in the Colbert era, right? That they've traded back
in the first round.
In the first round, correct? Yeah. So it's just it's going to be interesting.
We all know. I know we're getting along there, but we all know that exactly what happens for the Steelers is going to be, there are so many other factors out of their control of the 19 selections before them, or even even some of those are going to determine whether they trade up, stay put, trade back. If you had to bet big time on them staying put, because that's what they've done more often than not. But there's just so much that shapes everything. If Detroit takes Malik Willis number 2, because honestly, that's what happened in the mock draft that Rich and I did on Big Bro Scobro Show, whatever it's called. It's my own podcast. I don't even remember what it's called. But there's so much that could happen. And just think about this. How often are the mock drafts correct with the first 5 picks? Do you know what's really good in the first 5 picks? If you could get 3 out of 5, that's really good. And think of how much, even just what happens in the first 5 picks can change everything else in that first round. That's why we have no clue what's happening.
No, but not to mention this year, there's no Trevor Lawrence in this draft. Like there's no this is going to be
when
our
the quarterbacks are question marks, it changes everything. When the quarterbacks are, that these guys are the solid guys and who you want to take, then quarterbacks are going to be going in this range. When there's a lot of question marks at quarterback, it changes so much.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting. I keep mentioning that Tony Pauline interview. You can go back and listen to it. It was on Wednesday, and he mentioned how he felt that quarterbacks have been overdrafted for well over a decade, and I believe it. I mean, when you think about some of the reaches that have been made, and he said that in this draft class, in his opinion, only Malik Willis would be considered a first-round talent if they were in last year's class. I thought that was pretty staggering. So, whatever. Okay, prediction time, Dave. Next Thursday is the draft. If you were a betting man and you go into the casino, I'm putting money on the Steelers take this guy at pick number 20, or if they trade up, you got to talk about that scenario. What are they doing?
Oh my goodness. I really don't know. Because to me, look at last year, where the perfect fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers at 24 was Najee Harris. Everyone was saying the match made in heaven is Harris to Pittsburgh at 24. Both of them just fit each other so well. Would anything have changed if Christian Darrisaw didn't go at 23, who was supposed to go way higher? We'll never know. No. We'll never really know. We might kind of know, but we'll never know. What if that player, now that the Steelers are 4 picks ahead, what if that players there that you don't expect to be there? That's what I want from this draft more than anything. I want a player to be there that I didn't think would be there, and the Steelers to take them. That's what I want. I want someone like I'll get there. I'm setting it up, Jeff. I'm not giving a Dave answer, but I'm just saying ultimately my choice would be if somebody like I don't think Hamilton's going to fall all the way to 20.
No.
But let's say even someone like a Charles Cross, a very athletic offensive tackle. I wouldn't want the Steelers to pass on that if someone like that's available at 20. And other things. I know a lot of people were saying they would really like Jordan Davis. The Steelers don't utilize a nose tackle nearly as much as they did when they drafted Casey Hampton. If they're going to take Jordan Davis, he's going to have to just make sure that he's a guy that they are confident in, that he can be one of the two DTs when they're in nickel and dime.
He's got to be like Javon Hargrave. He's going to be like when they drafted Hargrave. He would have to be
a Hargrave. He'd have to be an Alualu, because Alualu's doing the same thing too. That's the type of nose tackle they've been having now, because that's the way the NFL has evolved. I don't know if they feel that way. I was a Devontae Wyatt person, but now, even though nothing's changed, even though the reports of the red flags are from 2 years ago, I don't know how the Steelers treated that when they started this whole process. For all I know, he could have been someone they weren't considering 3 months ago. We just don't know. So that would have been my pick, would have been Wyatt. I know KT Smith is big on him. So I'm just going to go total. Oh my goodness. I'll stick with Wyatt. I don't think they'll draft him because of that, but I'm just going to stick with it because I don't know where else to go.
All right. My prediction is that the Steelers are going to trade up.
Okay.
And they're going to trade up for one Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. And I'm going to have a front row seat of watching half of Steelers Twitter literally implode and annihilate itself. That's what'll happen. Yeah. People will be so mad. So mad. That pick. Hey, I'm not saying that's what I necessarily want. I'm saying my prediction is that I think the Steelers are going to trade up. Maybe not as far as you think. I don't think they're going to have to get to the top 10. I can see them trading up in front of New Orleans to try to get the guy.
I still don't think New Orleans is going quarterback. I don't think that's what they did there. A lot of people are like, oh, if you were going to go quarterback, but if you were going to go quarterback, you already had the pick ahead of the Steelers. You didn't have to worry about that. You didn't need a second one.
Yeah, but I think so. I see that, but New Orleans is going to have to think the Steelers might jump ahead of them, and so they have the two picks now that they can do that. So
yeah, I want the Steelers pick. Last year, the Steelers pick was obvious that it was Najee Harris, especially when Darrisaw went at 23. I don't know if they would have considered him or not. It was obvious that was the pick. No one was going to argue it. I want it to be. I felt Bud Dupree was the pick in that draft because he was supposed to go. Remember, he wore a red suit. He was going to Atlanta. Exactly. He was supposed to be higher. And I'm like, I almost feel like the Steelers had to take Bud Dupree here. That would be foolish not to make that pick. And that's what I want. I want there to be someone there, but you're like, come on, Steelers, don't let that one go.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be fun. Do you have trivia, Dave?
I do have trivia.
I don't. So this is a good chance for me to look like an idiot.
I had to tone down my trivia.
You can say dumb it down. It's fine, Dave.
No, I said tone it down.
That's not okay. An insult at all.
It's draft, but this is more whole NFL related.
And I had way worse than dumb in my life.
No. What I'm saying is, I framed the question to where a lot of it's several questions. A lot of them are you get to guess at a number, so you don't have to know like a specific name or something like that. Okay. So I was looking at the first overall picks in the NFL draft. First overall, since the merger, starting in 1970. The question is, how many Hall of Famers out of those 52 picks are there? Obviously, probably you could even say the last 32, because no one in the last 20 years is a Hall of Famer because it just hasn't been long enough. Out of those 32 picks, we'll even say, how many first overall picks are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
10.
You're pretty close, but you lost because you went over.
9.
The answer is 8.
8.
Okay. 8 Hall of Fame players.
TB12. Okay.
Yeah. Here's a follow-up here. Out of all 52 first overall picks, how many of those since 1970 were quarterbacks? Not the Hall of Fame ones, but how many out of the 52 first overall picks, how many of them do you think were quarterbacks?
18 came to mind. Andy Van Slyke.
Andy Van Slyke. Well, believe it or not, it's half of them. It's 26.
Wow.
26 first overall quarterbacks, 26 others. You know how many Hall of Fame quarterbacks you have first overall? Out of those 26? It's not more than 8.
Terry Bradshaw.
Terry Bradshaw's one. That's one. You could probably name them.
I probably couldn't.
Yeah, you could.
My mind's not working that well right now.
Come on.
Overall picks? I don't know.
First overall pick, quarterback in the Hall of Fame.
See, this is Brian's wheelhouse. I don't know.
1998.
Still don't know.
Come on.
Why don't you tell him?
That's
Peyton Manning. Wait,
okay, 1989.
Yeah, still don't know, Dave. I'm not an NFL draft guy.
Troy Aikman. This is one you should know.
Okay.
1983. Never played for the team that drafted him.
80. I was born in 83, Dave. I
don't know. Never played for the Colts. Refused to play for
him. John Elway?
That was John Elway. Yeah. 4. So out of 26 first overall quarterbacks since the merger, 4 Hall of Famers. 4 Hall of Famers. So when you think about that, and when you look at it, I mean, here's one more crazy number one. I got to ask you this one. Out of the 52 picks, first overall, how many of them failed at this time? Because some of them they still could. At this time, how many of them have yet or never made a Pro Bowl? Taken first overall and never made the Pro Bowl.
Baker Mayfield.
That's one.
Oh, I don't know. Out of how many?
Out of 52. How many players?
I'm going to say 30 never made a Pro Bowl.
That means only 22 of them made the Pro Bowl. That would be crazy. But no, the answer is actually 19. Well, if you think about it, that's high. 19 players drafted first overall.
Yeah.
Never made the Pro Bowl. Now, 2 of them are Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow because they were the last 2. And then Baker Mayfield. Then everyone else there has going all the way back to then Sam Bradford. Okay. Then you've got the biggest bust overall number 1 who only played 3 seasons in the NFL of
what? Ryan Leaf.
He was second. It was Jamarcus Russell.
Oh, okay. Jamarcus.
But think of that. 19. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, the Steelers, you need to get a Pro Bowl player in the first round. 36.5% of the time, the first overall pick is not even a Pro Bowler.
It's a good point. Good stuff. I'm horrible at this stuff.
I'm done.
All right. Well, why don't you do your final thoughts and we'll call it a show.
Final thoughts are, yes, this is the time, this last week heading up into the draft, you are going to hear the hottest of hot takes because there's been so many takes. The only way people think that they're going to be heard is if to make it super hot. And they're going to have to speak in absolutes, which drives me nuts. Can't stand it when people, the Steelers will, blah, blah, blah. Will they? Yeah, you're really making yourself to look out like a fool if they don't. I can tell you this. The Steelers will select at least one player in the 2022 NFL draft. Yes, that's my hottest take I'm going to get.
There you go.
But you're going to get a bunch of hot takes and everything. It's going to be, if you're like me, you just want to stick your fingers in your ears until they are taking the stage to announce the Steelers pick next Thursday. But it'll be a glorious thing when it finally gets here.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get this on the screen here. Snowman gives us $5. Thank you very much. He says, does anyone know when Bad is giving out teams for the BTSC draft?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea.
No clue. So,
he's not even asked, so
hit up Brian on Twitter, send him an email, do something. So we'll see. I don't know. But all right, Dave, thank you for your time. Make sure you check us out on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Wherever you get your podcasts, it's so much more than just our YouTube and Facebook shows. You can go wherever you listen to podcasts or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe and follow. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
All right, we'll see you next week for the round 1 recap. I'm pumped. All right, we'll see you next week. Take it easy.